Hi, and welcome to another Wichita Toy Train Club review. I'm Zachariah, and behind the camera we have Chris, and today we will be taking a look at the Lionel LionChief Plus Canadian Pacific GP38 number 3019. So before we go in depth on Lionel's rendition of the GP38, a little bit of history. The EMD GP38 is a 4-axle diesel-electric locomotive built by General Motors Electromotive Division between January 1966 and December 1971. The locomotive's power was provided by an EMD 645 16-cylinder engine which generated 2,000 horsepower. The company built 706 GP38 for North American railroads. A couple features about Lionel's LionChief Plus GP38s. They all come equipped with electric couplers both on each end of the locomotive. They each have 2 maintenance-free motors above each truck, so each truck is powered. They all can be ran with either the LionChief Plus remote that comes with the locomotive or with a standard transformer. The remote is identified by the road name and the engine number that also matches the locomotive. There is a switch to be able to convert from the remote and the transformer. They can also be run with AC or DC power. This allows it to be ran on any span of Lionel's product line. The locomotive can be ran with the wall packs that come with the standard LionChief ready-to-run sets, or with a standard Lionel or any other manufacturer 18-volt transformer. The locomotive also has a fan-driven smoke unit and all LED lighting. Now let's dive in and take a closer look at the Lionel LionChief Plus GP38. Okay, now we're looking at the front pilot of the locomotive. Right up front here we have the big O-gauge electric coupler which can be fired from the LionChief Plus remote. Up here on these here steps there is a safety tread molded in to it. This whole pilot assembly here is all die-cast metal, as is the whole frame. There are a couple other molded in details up front here. Over here along the side we have our steps. They all have a white stripe indicating where the step is, and it looks very nice. Up top here we have handrails that go all along the locomotive. They are kind of thick, but they are very nice for small hands. That way it's not as easy to break. Okay, now moving up. Right up here on the nose, we have our headlight. This is kind of a Rule 17. It's dimmed when we're stopped and lightens up when we start moving. On either side, we have 2 operating marker lights. Those are not colored, they're just clear. And all along the nose here, we have safety striping. They does seem to be a couple of imperfections in the paint, but it still looks very nice for this locomotive. Right down here we have some molded in details, and up here we have a molded in sand fill cap. Moving up we have a bunch of windows for the front of the cab. Right up here we have another headlight. This one turns off when you stop and then turns on when you start to move, and on either side there are 2 illuminated number boards. Now looking at the cab of the locomotive, right up here we have some smooth walkways that kind of come up here. There is no safety tread on them. We have a separately applied grab iron right here. Down here we have some molded in toolboxes. We have a nice crisp 3019. More cab windows. And as you can see up in between the 2 crew figures, we can see one of our maintenance-free flywheel motors. Now we've moved so you can see the crew figures. There's an engineer figure on this side and a conductor figure on the other. They are both hand-painted crew figures. As you can see, they both kind of look outwards. It's kind of weird instead of looking ahead, but that's how they're set up in there. And you can probably see a little bit better the motor in between them. Now looking below the frame of the locomotive, right up here, closer to the pilot, we have our F indicating the front of the locomotive. Right here underneath the cab, we have a General Motors plaque. You can see it if you get really close to it. Right here, we have a die-cast metal side frame. Looks very nice. Quite a few details in here, and is a nice-looking side frame. All along here, we have some white dots, along with a couple other molded-in details, and a nice looking fuel tank on the bottom side of the locomotive. Now moving back, we can see our air tanks back here, and our rear truck with the same die-cast metal side frame again looks very nice. And then we can start to see the back of our rear pilot. Now looking on the engineer side of the locomotive, here on the shell, again this whole shell is plastic. Right back here we have another plastic window insert. There is no door back here for going into the cab. We have those big looking handrails that go all the way down the side of the locomotive. Again, they're very prone to not breaking. Makes it good for small hands. All along the side that we have our molded in doors for the engine compartment. A couple legible placards on these two here doors. We have a nice crisp CP rail. We have kind of this here paint job for CP rail. Not really sure what it's supposed to be. It's just part of CP rail's paint scheme. Moving up, we have some molded in vents that also look very nice. Now looking on the back of the locomotive, right down here again we have that safety tread that's followed us all the way around the locomotive, and those big handrails. Right here we have a separately plied metal grab iron and a molded in detail back here. This whole back end has a very nice crisp black and white paint scheme going on back here. There are two non-operational marker lights back here, and then these here number boards are illuminated. This is also a functioning backup light, so when we put the locomotive into reverse, this light does turn on. And on this side of the nose back here, we have a bunch of separately applied metal grab irons leading up to the top. Moving to the top of the locomotive, right up here we have our 3-chime horn on top of the cab. Moving back, this here is all smooth. And we have another molded in detail into the shell and kind of a grate here. There are a couple rivets all the way around this here detail. Okay, now moving back, right here we have our fan driven smoke unit, and to add smoke fluid we pour smoke fluid directly down this here stack. It helps if you have one of those needlepoint dispensers to add smoke fluid, as without it you'll probably make a gigantic mess all over the top of the locomotive. There are some nice rivet detailings all the way around it. And back here we have 3 fan details and kind of another detail molded into the top of the shell. Right here, this here middle fan does pop up just to create a smooth top. I think that is a different version of the GP38. Don't know a whole lot on those, so I can't attest to which one's correct with CP rail or if it makes a huge difference or not. Now we have the locomotive flipped over so you can see the underside of it. Right here in the middle we have our speaker for the sound system in the fuel tank. Right here where the air tanks were we have our 3 switches for the locomotive. Up top here we have our remote transformer switch to control between the LionChief Plus remote and a regular transformer. In the middle here we have an RPM sound on-off switch. This turns off those idling sounds and the engine sounds from the locomotive. If you turn this off, both the horn, bell, and announcements still work. And down here we have our smoke on-off switch. Looking at our trucks, we have 4 axles along the whole locomotive. Right here in the middle we have 2 Cinerail pickup rollers. It's always a good idea to put a little dab of oil in between the wheel and that frame to make sure that your locomotive doesn't squeak, as Lionel doesn't oil these from the factory due to the fact that it might be coated in oil by the time you pull it out of the box. Over here you can see that this whole side has a bunch of gears that are open. It's always a good idea to make sure those are got a little bit of grease on them, just so they look wet. They don't have to be coated in grease or anything. And these trucks are free running, so you can spin them, so you can put a little bit of grease on it and just spin it. Just keep a little bit of grease on those gears. Okay, now we got power to the track, and as you can already see and hear, the locomotive is looking for the signal from the Lionel LionChief Plus remote. It's really neat to see that the cab light also blinks along with the chirping. So we'll turn this on, and the sound system immediately starts up. So now we can do the horn, bell, and the announcements.
Dispatcher here, hold your position. Standing by. Out.
If we double tap the horn, this fires our rear electrocoupler. If we double tap the bell, this fires our front electrocoupler. And if we press and hold the horn and bell for 3 seconds, we come into this sound control mode, so we can adjust the sound of the locomotive. So now we have the locomotive turned down quite a ways, and we can bring it back up. Alright, now that we're done with the review, let's take the locomotive for a spin around the layout.
This is the dispatcher. You're cleared outbound. Over. Roger. Out. Dispatcher here. You're all clear ahead. Acknowledged. Dispatcher here. You're on clear track. Very good. Out. Dispatcher here. Your track is clear. Over. Roger. Out. Dispatcher here. You're on clear track. Very good. Out. Dispatcher here. You're all clear ahead. Acknowledged. Dispatcher here. Hold your position. Standing by. Out.
Alright, as you can see that the locomotive runs very nicely, wonderful sounds, runs very smooth. All the LionChief Plus engines do have a speed control in them, so that makes it run really nice, even with the remote. This locomotive was last cataloged in Lionel's 2016 Volume 2 catalog, and the MSRP on this locomotive is $340. Now, if you go through a good Lionel dealer, you can probably get a pretty decent discount on that retail price. This concludes our review of the Lionel LionChief Plus CP Rail GP38 number 3019. Be sure to like us on Facebook so you get all the notifications on new product reviews and our open hours here in Wichita, Kansas. And be sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, again, so you get the most recent product review notifications. Thanks for watching.